Welcome to Public Safety Talk Radio, the podcast for all of our heroes in public safety, including law enforcement professionals, firefighters, EMTs, corrections officers, healthcare workers, and more. The show is proud to be a part of the growing National Police Podcast Network. This episode is sponsored by Police Mortgage. Police Mortgage is a full-service mortgage company dedicated to serving police officers and first responders. Founded in 2008, Police Mortgage offers a variety of mortgage products tailored to meet the needs of those who serve and protect. Police Mortgage, for first responders who are second to none. Hi, I'm Ken Bader, your host for Public Safety Talk Radio, and I have a real fun and interesting guest. Let me tell you a little bit about him. His name is David Tyree. He is a 25-year DEA agent, now working with Validate Financial as their senior advisor of financial crime detection and anti-money laundering. Not only does David have some incredible stories, and we probably already covered a few of those before we press record, from his law enforcement career, he now advocates for law enforcement agencies to level up their ability to follow the money. I take it that he's a big The Wire fan. So was I back in the day. And he wants to turn small busts into career makers. Let's bring him on the show. David, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Joe Rogan. I really appreciate it. I've been excited all week to speak with you. It's good to be here, Ken.
Great to have you. I don't have quite the guns that Joe Rogan does. Maybe someday I'll have the following, but I don't think I'll have those biceps.
You just have to buy a kettlebell. It's really easy, I guess.
Well, I'd have to fix my shoulder too from hurting it from the last time in the gym, but that's a whole nother story. So, really excited about talking to you because not only do I love talking to law enforcement professionals, obviously in public safety talk radio, but I've got a huge background in banking, and I
Oh, wow.
always love it when people that commit some type of fraud or laundering or something like that think that they could continue to get away with it. That I don't understand.
I'm right there with you. And I believe that, this notion of seizing assets from bad guys for restitution to victims of crime, to me, has driven sort of my narrative with both my time, both at DEA and at Validate. Like, what an amazing opportunity to give back to the victims of whatever the predicate crime is. So it's a passion of mine, and I worked in banking as well, and to see it all married together makes so much more sense. That public-private partnership to actually, again, if you're in law enforcement, right? How do you have measurable impact?
Mm-hmm.
I say take their money, take their ill-gotten gains, take the proceeds of the crime, and get it back to victims. That is, to me, is a beautiful story that other countries look at the United States and say, wow, that's a really interesting concept and plenty of opportunities to do it.
Yeah, I love that. I never really thought of it that way, but I think that that's spot on. I've never been a police officer, but I had the pleasure of speaking to hundreds and hundreds over the last 25, 30 years. And I could tell more stories. Well, you could tell more stories than I can, but I could tell plenty of stories about how, to really hurt the criminal, you don't put them in jail, you take away all their resources.
Right, and I love that, Ken. And I'm careful to say, because I've been on the stand and been asked, isn't it true that you seized my client's vehicle to hurt them? And what I learned to say, there's some great colleagues at DEA and some incredible prosecutors, is no, my goal is to disincentivize criminal activity. And if I can do it by taking away the economic backing of a drug trafficking organization or a human trafficking organization, a fraud organization, then I know they're not going to be able to reconstitute. I've worked with some of the best in the world at DEA, taking credit for a lot of their hard work, both domestically and internationally. And I've been a part of, tangentially, some incredibly big drug seizures. But at the same time, I've realized they'll make more. Right? They'll make more cocaine. We just had a giant interdiction of precursor chemicals going to Mexico. It was 670,000 pounds. And then Giada South out of Florida reported $10.1 billion in assets denied to drug trafficking organizations. So the interdiction of, I think, over 400 tons of cocaine. That's a lot. Now, I don't
Yeah.
know how you like to party, Ken, but that seems like a lot of narcotics. So that's really important, by the way. And I would never diminish ever the hard work that they're doing. My mantra is cool. Now let's look at the money behind this.
Right.
Let's trace that money. Let's look at the flow of funds. Let's target those individuals however we need to, whether they're a terrorist organization or a cartel. Let's target the money. Let's take that money from them in
Hmm.
conjunction with the drugs and putting them in jail. Now, what have we done? Now we're not just creating a vacuum, and I'm not trying to argue that that's what's happening. I'm saying we're it's sort of that full course Brazilian meal. If you've ever been to those restaurants where it's like nonstop, right?
Yeah.
That's the mindset I have, and I'm really careful because I don't ever want to diminish the hard work someone's doing. And because I've heard this a lot. Well, did you do a financial investigation? And it's like, wait a minute. I'm actually on the street combating fentanyl. I'm putting low level fentanyl dealers in jail because there's overdoses with real victims,
Right.
families, and there's a lot of devastation. So I'm so careful not to come in and condescend and be like, oh, but did you do a financial case? It's
Mm.
hard. It's challenging. It's tough to look at bank records and make sense of money movement. And I also think it's hard for law enforcement because, look, we don't have drugs, right? Cops don't have drugs around. You start telling them to take someone's money, well, they have money and they understand money in and they understand money out. They might not fully grasp what it looks like to open up an LLC to obfuscate your money through a construction company or moving it onto the blockchain in
Mm-hmm.
crypto and then downloading it to sort of avoid a paper trail. And that's where we come in, or I try to come in as a senior advisor with Valley and just try and help them. That's all they want to do at Validate. That's all I want to do. We have a platform that does some flow of funds that shows a visualization of money movement, which you look, I was DEA. I probably failed math more than anybody else. We're meaning
I
making
was told that we would never have math on public safety talk radio, just so you
good.
know.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, once they started introducing letters into math, I'm out. I'm out. And plus, if you're in law enforcement and you love to solve problems and you've got some teacher, even as a kid, I knew I wanted to be in law enforcement. Like, we have a problem. And then they would start telling me about some kid traveling on a train to Chicago and someone like, that's not a problem. That's not a problem at all. Here's a
That's not a problem.
problem.
I'll tell you a problem.
Let me show you this low level gang that's taking my lunch money every day. Do that math, teach. Hence, I failed algebra too, and I should
Yeah.
apologize to Mrs. Jantic. She was a great teacher.
Well, since you brought it up, let's go back a ways. What was the motivation to become a DEA agent? Were you lying there at night thinking about how you didn't want to do the train math problem and think, I want to solve, real issues. I'm going to become a DEA agent. How did your career lead you there?
Ken, it was I wasn't cool enough in high school for anyone to offer me drugs. So it was that drove me to the DEA and said, well, then I'm going to put you all in jail. That's not true, actually. We're joking and smoking here, but truth be told, I grew up in an addicted home. Thank
Mhm.
God for recovery. Um, and I watched at a young age bad guys making a profit off of my parents' addiction. And that drove me towards justice, towards this idea like this seemed like an injustice. And I'm very proud of the fact that they found recovery. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I saw my family suffering. I saw resources going out that probably could have been used for cooler shoes in my junior high
Yeah.
years. Um, and so that really moved me towards law enforcement. Out of college, I got an internship with United States Pretrial Services. So I was actually doing release work and working for federal judges at 22. Had no business doing any of that. But in that capacity, my job was to babysit defendants on release pending disposition of their criminal cases. So in that experience, I got to work with all the three-letter agencies because they wanted their targets incarcerated.
Sure.
My role was to work for the courts. And so in doing that, I was really drawn to the energy that the DEA agents brought into their investigations, because I got to read their reports, read the complaints around these targets, and I thought, there's no way I could do what they do. And one day they invited me out to a barbecue, um, and I was asked, like, hey, would you ever consider applying? And I thought, well, here's just another place where I'll fail in life. And I don't know how I made it through the process, but I was hired after about a
Mm.
year, and it really changed the trajectory of my life. I wasn't former law enforcement in the academy per se. I learned so much from so many wonderful state and local law enforcement throughout my career. I was called Rooklet the first 3 years. I was 23 years old. I was literally told by an immigration agent that I had to shut my mouth for 3 years or he was going to take me out back and beat me. And I believed him. To this day, I believe him.
Did
But
you
I
survive
learned,
that beating?
I kept, believe it or not, as much as I'm talking now, I'm getting all my words out from 3 years of like
Mm.
basically silence. But I get to reflect back, right? I retired in April of 2023 as a resident agent in charge of the DEA in Wyoming. And when I say the DEA in Wyoming, we had 5 agencies working with us embedded. And I learned more from the great investigators from the Wyoming Division of Criminal Investigation or Cheyenne Police Department or you name it, Casper Police Department. They would send over just the best and brightest. And I continued to the day I retired, learning not just how to do a great case, a successful prosecution,
Sure.
but also I learned about how to treat people. I learned how to treat your colleagues. And it's a really interesting association that we have in law enforcement, and normal people don't get that. I teach a lot to normal people in the financial institutions about how to identify money laundering typologies and report it up chain to your financial investigative units. And I've noticed that what the motivation is not association. And I look at your shirt, I'm looking at my desk and all the coins and the back wall, the
Mm.
badges, the patches. Like, we're not motivated in law enforcement by power or achievement, because how do you measure that? It's
Right.
the association and the desire to leave things better than we found them. So it's really, for me, if I didn't say it in the beginning, I got to thank you because it's such an honor. When I see somebody, you see my background with the thin blue
Yeah.
line, like that means, especially right now in our society, so much to me. It's that one institution for me I can believe in because we are authentic. We're doing our best to be transparent. We're doing our best to protect and serve in a society at times that doesn't want us there. And as someone who's very needy, by the way, that's just such a challenge. So I have so much respect for what everyone in law enforcement is doing. And now being retired, I will be honest, every time there's a marked unit behind me, I get
Mm.
nervous. And now I know how the rest of the world must feel.
They're coming after you. They're on your bumper. Yeah, this is I appreciate that. I was never a first responder, but given all the work that I've done in the law enforcement space, I'm proud to wear this shirt and even sometimes getting a couple of dirty looks, I just give them dirty looks back. But
There you
also
go. That helps. That helps the cause.
that's completely legal. But yeah, you mentioned a while back in our conversation, you don't know how I like to party. I used to love to party with tons and tons of alcohol until I got sober 5.5 years ago. So,
Oh,
unfor thank
congratulations.
you. Unfortunately, I know a little bit about addiction. I was never into drugs, never did any drugs. I think part of it was I didn't want to go into alleys to buy
There you
product
go.
when it
They're
was
very
so
dangerous.
it was so much easier just to go in a liquor store or a bar. It's like, why do I need to go in an alley? I got all this in front of me, but I know a little bit about addiction, unfortunately, and I'm really proud to hear that your parents have gotten through it, and it's unfortunate you had that experience in your childhood. But let's get back to the subject matter at hand because I really want to hit on Follow the Money. I
Oh,
too
wow.
am a huge fan of The Wire. I think it's the best show that HBO ever came out with. Made a lot of sense, and I know from my banking background is that a lot of dumbasses, as we like to joke about, get caught, not because they did one crime, but because they thought that they were so intelligent that they did multiple crimes. Hey, I got away with this 12 other times. I'm going to get away with this again. So talk a little bit more about this concept of follow the money to catch these bad guys.
Sure. Thank you for that. I would start with, since we're talking about shows, my favorite is by far Narcos,
Oh
second
yeah, I love
to
that too.
Ozarks.
Mhm.
Just really proud. I've gotten to speak with Steve Murphy, and I know what they did. And so when people ask me, I say, go watch Narcos. You want to understand what we do. So when we talk about following the money, first of all, I'm really careful because I think we need to action the money. I
Hmm.
have two dogs. I walk them. Following them is irritating, to be honest. I look at the idea of actioning the money for targeting purposes. Okay. All money moves for a reason. Your money, my money, bad guy's money. I go back to following money as a mechanism of either developing intelligence, because again, if you and I went to Target, we'd both probably get in trouble for stealing, but assume we didn't get in trouble for stealing. And you and I just said, wow, how do we take down Target? Well, it's not the folks pushing the carts from the lot that are necessarily making a profit off of everything being sold in that store. It's
Mhm.
actually probably not even the cash register operators. It might be now you get into mid level management, but I can tell you at Target, there's somebody sitting up above who's probably the highest paid person, and they're not touching the merchandise, they're not touching the carts, they're not overseeing necessarily all the registers. When we talk about following the money, one, it's complex. It can get frustrating at times.
Mhm.
Money laundering is an umbrella, right? You've got your placement, layering, and integration phase under this umbrella of money laundering. It's convoluted by design, right? And they're
Right.
trying to obfuscate source of funds so they can buy stuff, right? Homes, shiny cars, boats, things like that. Our job in law enforcement to follow that money is to actually action that money from what we're doing, that analysis, and create. I'll tell you this: juries, from my experience, understand money movement a lot more than they understand bulk quantities of narcotics, because we
Sure.
don't get to get up there and talk about, even if it was alcohol, how many beers does it take to get you drunk? Well, we're not able to speak to those terms, and I'm not in the treatment world. But when
Mhm.
I start talking about money movement, saying, listen, the tow truck driver that was arrested in this investigation, we got their bank records. He's claiming, as I understand, that he had no knowledge that there was 30 pounds of meth in the vehicle he was towing. However, when I got his bank records, ladies and gentlemen, jury, let me show you. He's paying $4,000 a month towards a mortgage in Sacramento, California. He's a tow truck driver. He reports when he bought the Mercedes he's driving that he earns $2,600 a month. Oh, he paid cash $88,000 for this vehicle. Let me show. Now, what I'm showing the jury is a picture. Now, let me put a human spin, because that sounded really cool. But now, think about someone who does overdose on fentanyl. Saw way too much of this, and the first responders that listen to your show probably see it more than law enforcement. And it's really sad. It's really hard, because there's victims. There's a lot of victims around that, family members. And what I look to with the money movement is, how do we identify the source here? How, I mean, and cops will look through the phone, right? And if it's the money's now moved onto a from a peer-to-peer application to a bank account, great. Now you're identifying who's received that money. You can probably marry up some texts. But that person that sold the fentanyl to the decedent, that person not only needs to go to prison, but we need to figure out the money movement. Where were
Mhm.
they being supplied? And I believe following the money tells that story. And Ken, I'll tell you, anybody that emails, I'll give them all the resources I have, including like links to different uh, Cash App vendors. I guess they call peer-to-peer vendors. They have a
Mhm.
law enforcement support group. I'm happy to connect cops with those resources, because you just never know when you're going to need it. And I'm a huge Batman fan, as you can probably not tell. But why I like Batman is he had this utility belt. One, he didn't have any superpowers and he was super rich.
Right.
So that, of course, appeals to me because I have no superpowers and I'm not super rich. But he had a utility belt. And I look at the network that you're creating through this podcast. You're creating a network of cops who can talk to one another. When I'm in Albany, New York, and we just arrested somebody out of Arizona, out of Phoenix, this podcast creates a link where they can reach out and make kinetic energy. And I'm trying to make a link to this following the money. That's the
Sure.
same link I'm trying to say is like law enforcement can and should quickly be able to make sense of money movement in support of their investigations. And yes, and I loved The Wire. I love all of us on the other side working it. It's not the sexiest part of our job, Ken.
Right.
I hate to tell you, but fat fingering bank records from a subpoena when your team's going out to do enforcement action, good luck. Been there, done that. And I'm horrible at both. Trust me, they never asked me to go on surveillance. They're like, oh, if we want it burnt, bring David. But on the financial cases, I had some great support from different agencies saying, hey, did you thought of this? Have you seen this? And my initial, by the way, when I started, it was always just call IRS. And eventually this IRS guy goes, stop calling me. I'm going to show you how to do this. And it wasn't that it wasn't difficult, and they were phenomenal investigators. But once I saw it, I kind of never looked back, because all of a sudden I was seizing not just narcotics, but from a customs agent, I learned how to seize a house.
Yeah.
I was like, this is so cool. Like, from a law enforcement perspective, I was like, not only did we take this guy out of the community, he doesn't belong there. He's making a profit off some of the weakest in our community. And I say that lovingly on those that are, that never intended to wander into addiction. That's never anyone's intention. Right. But here they are, and they're burning down the house to keep their corner so they can fund their addiction. I'm like, but this guy's going to go do 5 years and he gets to go back to all his stuff. Like, and I've said this a lot. I mean, cops, military, first responders, anybody with a pension, we measure our time, right?
Sure.
How long you been doing this? The only other people to do this are inmates. That's not normal. And so when you think about, we're doing a time for a pension or retirement, benefits, whatever, how much inmates will do their time. And if they can come back out into society and have all of their ill-gotten gains, it's like, well, we're kind of doing the same thing, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah, let's dig into, you started to get into the financial statements and the records and all that. And I have a background in banking. I've got a whole finance degree. I never really enjoyed digging into financial statements and creating financial statements. But I understand them, and I also understand what an onus that is. Especially for, say, a police officer in a small city that, wants to build a case and just doesn't have the time, not necessarily the wherewithal, but the time to really, really dig into that. So talk a little bit about the process of digging into the statements and the transactions to be able to get these guys, in essence.
Perfect. And I'm going to actually I'm going to apply it to that officer you were just speaking about. So imagine a DUI checkpoint. You encounter somebody who's clearly inebriated. You arrest them for DUI. They're not cooperative at all. And if that officer had the ability to grab that bank card and then subpoena transactional data around that bank card, and then upon receipt, right, they're getting, let's say, 30 days of records. Well, that could be significant amount of bank records. Maybe you want to go back 6 months. What are they looking for? If they're looking for the fact that the driver was at the TGI Fridays 40 minutes before the traffic stop and it spent $88. Now you've got to go back into TGI Fridays, maybe serve subpoena. Hey, what did they buy? Oh, it was just Michelob Light. Huh. Now in the discovery process, you just provide over these bank records and the essence of your reporting, and defense has to compel their subject who is non-cooperative. You got to take a hit on this. You're going to plead guilty. That's what following the money means to me. It's making a story. Now, to your question, getting those bank records and making sense of them. I work for a company. I just consult. And what they do is they have a platform where you upload the bank records. It's web-based. Within about less than a day, it turns back those records in a visualization, always one click away from the raw data you uploaded, and it tells a story of the money movement from a drug trafficking, human trafficking, fraud scenario, even a crypto fraud case. This data is critical to be analyzed quickly, and you have to make sense of it. I spent far too long. I would spend months doing that in conjunction with other duties. I brought a case to them in retirement. I'd already seized 300 grand. In fact, the bad guy brought me a check for another 80 grand. And when I sent it to validate, just to see what they could do, the co-founder says, "Why did you miss this million?" I'm like, "What? I've been doing this 25 years. I'm designated in federal court as a subject matter expert. What do you mean I missed something?" You know how gentle how egos can be bruised.
Right.
And what he
Right.
showed
I
me,
have no ego to be bruised.
I know, yeah.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
showed me that within, that's good. Within about, in the year-long analysis I conducted, I missed that this bad guy was moving money to his spouse's account. He had bought 3 different high dollar, over $100,000 vehicles and sold them back to the dealership within a week. And so what I missed were those cashier's checks back from the dealerships. I was looking at cash. I couldn't make a story of the money because for me, I was writing a seizure warrant for bank accounts, looking at Excel that I was creating, cutting and pasting Excel into a seizure warrant affidavit, working with a prosecutor, working with an incredible investigative unit out of Northern Colorado, but they had to pull the dope. They got to get the dope off the street. And trust me, when I'm nerding out on bank records, that is not the priority. The cops aren't seizing assets because they're greedy. They don't get the money. They're like, "Good, you want to take his assets? We're taking the case down in 2 days." I was so far behind the 8 ball because I didn't have a program like Validate to quickly make sense of that money movement. By the way, when I say quickly, it's also accurate. Like the bank records don't lie. You know this. I worked in banking in retirement. I was doing internal audit for financial crimes and risk management. There are stakeholders that need to know about money movement before a case is ever escalated to an investigation internally. So when I talk about following the money, talking to them about how to exploit data from the BSA, Bank Secrecy Act reports that they generate, because there's a lot of derogatory information in those data, and data points that law enforcement can use if they can be actioned quickly. So you have a finance degree. I mean, it's laborious, and unless you're really into that stuff, and God bless those that are, I am not. I mean, look, law enforcement for the most part, maybe we're wannabes, but we're apex predators dealing with apex predators. So in that engagement, when I'm like, whoa, has anyone followed the money? It sounds horrible. So I am working with this company to get this platform and is the hands of as many investigators, regardless of what cases they're working on, so that they can have efficacy and maybe some impact. Because somebody along the line is going to say, "Oh, did you follow the money?" Because it's all over Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
You watch any movie now and it's almost an expectation. And my concern is that at some point, defense attorneys are going to start asking us on the stand, "Did you do a financial investigation?" And if we say no, they can look to the jury and be like, "Well, how can you, concede?" So that, to me, we're providing a tool. It's not the Messiah. There is no such thing in law enforcement. It takes a village. We just want to provide that tool because when you need it, and I could tell you for hours about cases where we get called, whether, and most recently, a terrorist event within a half block of my office in Boulder. And guess what? We're getting with the sheriff's office, the PD, the feds. Here, follow the money. Here's the platform. Get the bank record. You're doing a warrant. Dump them in. It's yours to look at. Make a story. Is this a lone wolf? Is it tied to an organization? You may never use it in prosecution, but it's very helpful. We found, not we, but it was reported that January 1 of this year, 2025, in New Orleans, there a person, bad guy actually, drove a vehicle into people, initially reported as a lone wolf. Right. They were able to demonstrate he had $150,000 funding from ISIS. And the Iraqis have actually arrested and detained source of funds. That's following the money. That's telling a story,
Yeah.
right? And that's where we collectively need to work together to tell a better story.
Yeah, I love that narrative. One thing that I've done in my recent past, a hell of a lot more fun than finance and digging through financial statements, is I covered a true crime podcast for Podcast Magazine. And through that, surprisingly, I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of prosecutors that did podcasts, were guests on podcasts, and so forth. And one of the things that I remember as a theme from them was we have to create, not create, but I'm using the wrong words, but develop and put together the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And even locally, I give a lot of kudos to. I live in Long Beach, California, and give a lot of kudos to the Long Beach Police Department and their council people that put together this program called um, Lights, Camera, Action, or something like that. I know I'm probably getting it wrong, but basically, it is if you agree to put a camera on your house that will also face the street, face some kind of public area, and register it with the Long Beach PD. They'll pay for part of it or all of it if it's chief camera. I only got paid for part because I bought the expensive one.
Of course you did, Ken. Gosh, you're high. You've got real high taste. I just get
Yeah.
it just on this podcast. I can just tell you'd be difficult at a mall.
Well, but the point is there, and I remember a local police commander talking about this is in a presentation that I went to go see him. I said, "Well, what can we do as citizens? The LBPD is understaffed, and
Mhm.
there's unfortunately a lot of crime in a city like this in Los Angeles County. What can we do?" And he surprised me with he talked about the cameras. And he said, maybe a crime doesn't happen on your street, but a crime may have happened 3 blocks away. And
Absolutely.
and
Yep.
by you having that camera, we can develop a timeline and we could say, yeah, he was there. He was within 3 blocks, within
Ken,
like 2 minutes. You
I,
continue. Go ahead.
I know I can't say how timely what you're speaking about. It's incredible. And I don't know, look, I'm just now a consumer of the media, but if you saw how they've apprehended the suspected shooter of Charlie
Yeah,
Kirk,
the
it was
assassin.
from a
Yeah.
neighborhood camera.
Yep.
And I was just last week, and I'm gonna do a shameless plug for Stephen Casella. He's a wrote as a United States Attorney's Office or Office Assistant U.S. Attorney. He wrote the Department of Justice's manual on asset forfeiture. He
Mhm.
brought me over to Cambridge last week to speak at an international conference on asset forfeiture and money laundering, economic crime. And there was so many countries and so many smart people. I had no business being there, but he's got a website, assetforfeiturelaw.us. And what he does is consult law enforcement on exactly what you're talking about, drawing this bigger picture to make a story for everyone to see and understand. And I'll tell you, I learned at that conference there is this universal concept around asset recovery to compensate victims and restitution.
Mhm.
And I think about just your idea, even about a camera, right? To serve the greater good. I was in the UK, everything's on CCTV everywhere you go. And there's an admonition on the train that says, see it, say it, salt it. And I'm not sure what any of that meant, but there's this collective mindset to collaborate. And I'll say this and then you can shut me up. While in Europe, it occurred to me their superheroes fight the government. Braveheart, Gladiator, Robin Hood, name it. Our superheroes in America help. They help law enforcement. They want to protect the
Mhm.
community. I think everybody in our community has the opportunity and the choice to be a superhero. Unfortunately, it's been reductive, like, oh, you're a snitch. No, you're creating a safe community. I think our kids should be able to get together at a park and ride a train, and not be fearful for their safety at any level. That
Yeah.
takes a community conscious effort to say, not here. And how
Yeah.
do we do that? Like we can attack the drug supply. We should be providing treatment for the demand. We should be providing mental health counseling for anybody that needs it. And all that money should be coming off the backs of bad guys, making a profit all over the world, trafficking in people, narcotics, you name it. And that to me is so clear that I don't see any ambiguity. And I've talked to people on both sides of the political spectrum. Everyone agrees. Caveat, they want oversight on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
They want transparency. They want accountability. We can't be policing for profit. We've got to be really careful about excessive fines. And we have to be really thoughtful about telling an accurate story of the money movement. Because if that makes us, that to me is where I spend the most time. And it's really an honor to get to work with customers, or I just call them cops, that use our platform, because they're overwhelmed with what they're doing. And I get to sit down and go, look, let me look at the records. Let's give me 24 hours. Let's get back. And then I'm just telling them what I'm seeing. I can't prove their case out. The records don't lie.
Right.
But we found so many what seem like small cases that they'll bring to us. And, by the end of their use of the platform, it's like, no, you're into a multi-million-dollar investigation here. And they're really happy about that, because the resources they're dedicating to the case, I don't know, I guess it makes you feel pretty good when you take out the economic incentive and the economic backing of a quote organization, because that organization could be 3 or 4 people. But again, if they're making a profit off of, pimping and pandering,
Yeah.
that there's victims involved. I got to watch Cheyenne Police Department do some incredible human trafficking work, and they followed the money.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched those guys and girls take what I thought was a hotel motel, prostitution case, and they identified over $300,000 being moved to an inmate where you live, who was running the show. And I thought, wow, yet again, when you follow the money, you're telling a story. And they told this story to me. I had the honor of watching them take that case to the U.S. Attorney's Office to trial, and they did such a great job. But the resources, they didn't have Validate, and I think the resources came at a cost, right? The cost of other cases that probably could have been worked at the same time.
Yep, agreed. I could probably dig into at least a half a dozen of the things that you just said, which were spot on. But I know you've got better things to do than to talk to me. You need to
No, I
go.
love this, Ken. I'll
You
do
need
it
to
all
go. You need to
day.
go out there and catch bad guys. But one thing that I'm really interested in is you talk about, yeah, the follow the money. You obviously have a lot of passion for this, and really appreciate the service that you've given to this country, both as a
Thank you.
DEA agent and what you continue to do with Validate. Tell us about one bust, whether it was through Validate or through the DEA. One that you look back and say, we really did something there. I'm really proud. I'm sure you got many stories, but give us one before we wrap up and let you go, of your favorite bust.
I'm looking high and to the right, because I have to start with, and my friends will listen to this, I never made a case by myself. I
Right.
always had a team of really great people that put their faith and their time and their resource into what I was asking them to do. And I learned and took more than I ever gave. So I will tell one story. This is out of Wyoming. And the state brought a case. They'd seized about, I think, $1,600 from a local drug trafficker. The trafficker asked to get that money back. They brought the case to me, and we worked it together. So it was not me. The IRS, myself, and the state worked on this case. We identified 5 different bank accounts that this particular bad guy was using to launder drug proceeds. Local coke dealer, coke and meth dealer. We identified, I believe, I want to say close to $2 million in assets. Now I might be high on that, but I know we seized 4 houses that were paid for in full by the bad guy. He bought and paid for 4 houses in 3 years. Told us, I don't launder money. Well, yeah, you do. He was dumping his drug money into his construction account, commingling cash from drug sales with checks for legitimate business, placement phase, and money laundering. He was then moving that money to 4 different bank accounts, And from those accounts, taking out home equity lines of credit for 30 years. So, right, as someone out of the banking, someone's
Yeah.
betting on that interest and then paying the homes off. And when they brought the case to me, Ken, I was like, really? $1,200? And it turned into one of the most amazing cases. And the IRS agent, who's still a good friend of mine, I found one house in the bank records, right? And I'm writing to seize this home, working with the prosecutor, working with our, and he says, David, why don't you take these other three homes? I'm like, what are you talking about? And he shows me, and I said to this guy, I'm not gonna say his name, I said, we want credit, we want recognition. And I said, why don't you do it? He goes, no, you do it. And he modeled to me this amazing like humility. The investigator from the state is one of my favorite people in the world because he had to go through and show the prosecutor through phone toll records and texts how all this money was tied to narcotics. And this guy is now a leader within the agency he works for. And I was so impressed at that. It's like the hunt, man. And
Yeah.
it was driven not because we didn't get the houses, we didn't get, but I will tell you this. I'm going to finish with this. That group I got to work with in Wyoming, we at one point read a book, some of us, and we said, how do we show the community we care? Because that was the big deal. We wanted to show the community we care. And from the director of the state at that time, the state agency, we did a little CrossFit thing and raised about $800. We took that money and we bought food baskets. We called probation and we said, who are your four worst violators? And they gave us the names and the address. We delivered just on a letter, just said, hey, we're the police, first responders in the community. We want you to know we care about you. And left food baskets. Never talked to anybody. Never told the news. I think you're the fourth person I've told this story to. And I'm telling it to you, not, it wasn't my idea, but we ran with it. It was such a beautiful thing. And I think now being out of it, seeing what law enforcement and first responders, the impact that they have is really hard to measure because that abused kid never gets a chance to come and tell the EMT or the firefighter or the policeman, hey, the day you showed up, that changed things.
Yeah.
Mom or dad got scared and that abuse stopped. And so, yeah, following the money is super important. It is. But combating the wickedness and the abuse and the sadness and the devastation that happens regardless of your economic standing, race, creed, color, religion, it's happening. And my heart goes out to the first responders and law enforcement at a level that is difficult to articulate because I'm now on the other side and I get to hear the stories. And I wish the cops could hear them because it would reinforce what they're doing. It would uh, enable them to do the next day because I know how hard it is some days to get dressed up and go be normal, right? I really know how hard it is to go and try to be normal with normal people now because I'm horrible at it, as you know from our pre-call. Um, but if there was a message to communicate, two messages. One, yeah, action the money, reach out. My email is davidatyree@gmail.com. I have a work email. I'll get you access to the platform. I'll get you go-bys. I'll get you PDFs. I'll come train you. I'll do whatever you need. What an amazing country we live in. And regardless of politics, regardless of the division, people are always going to call the cops. People are
Yeah.
always going to call 911. Doesn't matter what side of the fence they're on. And it's so beautiful that we live in a country that those cops show up no matter what. And I've lived overseas. That wasn't always the case. And so to me, Ken, it's such an honor to even get to speak to or about something that I spent most of my adult life engaged in. And I'm so grateful for the friendships. I'm sad for those that didn't work out because it's a tough industry, and I'm humbled by this opportunity. So I just want to thank you.
No, it's my pleasure, David. And you already answered what was going to be my last question, but let's
Sorry.
No. Let's
I take it
repeat it.
back. Whatever I said, I take it back. How's
No,
that?
you don't want to take it back because I could talk to you for another hour, but we need to wrap it up. And as I always do, I want people to be able to find you, whether they want you to speak or use Validate Financial or just reach out to you. You gave your email address
Sure.
already. Yeah, how best can people out there reach a David Tyree?
LinkedIn, smoke signals, David A. Tyree at gmail.com works. You laughed at that. No one laughs at that one. Um,
I usually use carrier pigeon, but
you can
continue.
use those.
Yeah.
I would say, and the message here for ultimately is hope, Ken, especially with what's going on in the world. And it's not my work. It's from a musician who said, hope is a warrior's mindset. And it's an adversary to anything other than. It's not a tactic, it's a mindset. And I hope that your listeners will take on a deeper examination of why they're doing what they're doing and find resources, find help if they need it. Talk to a therapist, talk to a professional, talk to a trusted adult, loved one, whatever. What we see in this community is one, you're 1% of 1%. Two, you see the worst side, right? The belly of the beast. And I think it was Nietzsche that said, be careful lest the beast you become. Don't Google that because it might not have been Nietzsche. It might have been Hugh Jackman. But either way, I am just so honored for this opportunity. And that's not lip service. I got nothing to gain out of this. If someone needs something and I can help them, I'll connect them. If it goes really well, they know I'm DEA, so I'll take credit for it. What else can I tell you?
Well, I so enjoyed speaking with you. It's been an honor to spend a little bit more than an hour with you. Love what you're doing. Love what Validate Financial is doing. Thank you for taking some time today.
Mr. Rogan, this has been awesome. I'm excited to see what we do after. Are we going to go work out in cold plunge when this is done?
We could maybe
Cool.
the workout I could do the cold
Yeah,
plunge,
with your
not so
bad
much.
shoulder. I
Yeah,
don't know, Ken. I don't know
yeah.
with your bad shoulder.
Although with my bad shoulder, the cold plunge would probably help. But yeah,
At my age, it's all bad. There's not just
yeah,
one.
yeah.
There's not one part, but I'm glad that you're doing better.
David, it's been awesome. Thank you again. And thank you to all of you who have either watched or listened to this episode of Public Safety Talk Radio. And we'll be back with you next week with another great guest. Public Safety Talk Radio is produced by Bader Training and Consulting. Public Safety Talk Radio is also proud to be a part of the growing National Police Podcast Network. The National Police Podcast Network is a dedicated media network powered by the National Police Federal Credit Union, developed in partnership with experienced podcast professionals and public safety advocates. Learn more about the National Police Federal Credit Union at nationalpolicefcu.com.